And I kind of want to give a shout out to Tom for Midnight's Edge because he was the one that was talking about this on Twitter, and I actually got involved with a discussion with him and some other people that saw this because he was musing about this, and a couple of us started talking with him about it, and kind of got a neat thread going about this. And I thought it was interesting, and I figured you would find this interesting, Dave, because you are such a big fan of this particular film. So this is a Hollywood Reporter article, and it reads, Danny Elfman explains his displeasure over how Batman used his score. This is dated April 30th. So this is apparently a fairly recent quote from him. So Danny Elfman recently opened up about his displeasure concerning how his score to Batman was used in the film. The iconic composer addressed the rumor while he was a guest at the Premiere Guitar podcast. The Oscar-nominated Elfman explained that he was greatly disappointed at the premiere of Batman in 1989 when he heard for the first time how his score was used in the Tim Burton classic. Elfman said he was, quote, reasonably happy with the mix of the score, his 10th, but disappointed with the dub or how the music was transferred into the film. Quote, I was terribly unhappy with the dub in Batman, Elfman said. They did it in the old school way where you do the score and turn it into the quote-unquote professionals who turn the knobs and dub it in. And dubbing had gotten really wonky in those years. We recorded multi-channel recording on 3 channels, right, center, and left. And basically, they took the center channel out of the music completely. Elfman said this was done so there was more room for sound effects. He said it didn't have any care put into it. I've had many scores play in big action scenes that really propelled the scene. And in the end of the Batman dub, I realized I could have had the orchestra play anything. I could have scored the film with some percussion, a harmonica, and a banjo, because all you hear are some percussion hits and the big moments, but you can't really hear what the orchestra is doing. He went on to say, this is my first lesson in how so-called professionals can take a score and the soundtrack to a movie and just do their thing in a very non-committal way that is the easiest for them. Plunk it off to the side and just get the dialogue. So I'm really curious if you had heard about this rumor before, Dave, because I know you were a huge fan of the Michael Keaton, Tim Burton Batman movie, and I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently this has been circulating since the movie came out, that Danny Elfman was very upset about how his score was treated. And I'm curious if you'd even heard about this before.
Well, here's kind of the deal. Isn't this the age-old debate, though, between the score and the sound effects people? Like, I feel like that, like, this has been this thing that's been going on since forever, it seems like. There's a lot of... it's just one of those things. It's like you hear this from a lot of different kind of places. There's it's going to sound weird, but I'll pull out the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie, for example. The Dolph Lundgren Punisher score that was released many years ago has a really kind of cool supplementary portion to it. And it's actually the director of the film, the guy who scored the film, and then the person who is the executive who helped put this project together. In context of, sorry, I just coughed. In context of the score vis-a-vis the film, right? And it's interesting to hear them talk. And they talk about the idea about trying to carve out space for the score, but then also have room for the sound effects. And I know also for a little while there, I've been listening to, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a podcast about scoring movies. And they talked about this thing. It's just like this age-old battle between the people who do the sound effects and the people who do the score. And it's just this never-ending battle. And then as far as addressing Danny Elfman's concern about being in a creative endeavor, and you trust your collaborative partners to bring their A game and then they take the short way out just to get the project out the other side, and just get it completed and get on to the next thing. Well, that's kind of the nature sometimes, unfortunately, of how sometimes these collaborative, partnerships go. You know what I mean? A lot of this work, you're basically paid by the piece, right? I mean, not in this particular instance. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of like, let me get my part done on this so I can get on to the next thing, because you're trying to make a living and trying to pay your bills. So I understand his complaint, and I think it's unfortunate. But I'm going to be honest with you. I, as a moviegoer, have never felt like that Danny Elfman's music was disserved in the film. I feel like that his music is so much a part of this film, and creates a mood and a tone and helps to kind of shape a world, that I've never really felt like that I've missed anything from the music portion of Batman 89. Like, a matter of fact, I feel like sometimes, just like we were talking with Mortal Kombat, like, you almost can't separate the music from this movie. It's so specific to this world. I mean, you tell me, Eric. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I'd never heard this rumor before. I'd never heard about this. This apparently has been something that's been circulating pretty much from day one, that Elfman was very upset. And I consider it an iconic soundtrack. I consider it one of the best soundtracks out there. I think it was done really, really well. But at the same time, it makes me want to go back and watch the film and listen and really listen, and to see if I can detect what it is that he's upset about. Because sometimes I don't watch a film with a critical ear. So, I mean, that because you're more into what's going on with the action or the plot or all sorts of things. There's a lot going on in this particular movie. It's because it's really, really well done. It's iconic. So it does make me want to go back and check it out. But one of the things that happened when I was discussing that on the thread is people were pointing out, well, like, which version? Like, one guy was telling me the 4K version sucks. He said, actually, it's the sound effects, the sound design that's terrible, not the score. I was like, really? It's like, oh, because I don't have access to the 4K version. And, then people were talking about, well, what about this version and that version? And it is kind of funny to think about that, because they do change. So you have the theatrical version, however that was, when it actually came out in the movie theater. But then you're also going to have the VHS version, which I kind of wanted to play with that with them, but I decided I'm not going to go there. But it's like the VHS version is probably a little bit different, the way the sound works on that. Then there's a DVD version, and there's been probably multiple DVD versions, including like special editions and all that kind of stuff. Then you start getting into Blu-ray. You see how that goes? It gets kind of weird. So it almost gets to the point that, well, can you even get like the theatrical version to figure out what it is that Danny Elfman's talking about? I wonder if you actually can. I almost feel like you would have to get like the Laserdisc version or something like that in order to get it as close as possible to what it actually would have been like in the theater.
Well, and this is kind of the deal. Like I said, I know as a moviegoer, having seen the 89 movie, I never really felt like, at least I couldn't detect anything where something seemed out of step in context of the music or the effect, the sound effects or anything like that. I just know that there is this age-old debate, it seems like, where the people who are doing the sound effects for the movie and sometimes the people who are doing the score for the movie, that there is sometimes this tug of war that goes on behind the scenes that most people are not privy to, where there is a debate about what sells the moment better, the sound effect or the music. And so I understand where Danny Elfman's coming from, but that being said, I would never consider a less than stellar element of the 89 movie to be Danny Elfman's music in any context whatsoever. I mean, in my mind, anyway, the 89 Batman movie is one of the best movie soundtracks ever recorded of all time, period. End of debate in my mind. And matter of fact, it's like I said, the biggest problem I feel like with the 89, Elfman score is that it is so synonymous with this film that even though Danny Elfman has created great music for other movies, sometimes it's so his sound is so specific at times that I almost sometimes feel like that it's almost like, well, this could have been from the 89. You know what I mean? It's like it's too similar. Does that make sense?
Do you have a specific example of that? I'm trying to think of something
um
specific.
you know, it's hard to be really specific. I think the one that makes the least amount of sense is that, for example, like for example, Danny Elfman did the score for the Planet of the Apes movies. Okay. And this is going to be the farthest reach. Okay. But I know that sometimes when I listen to his score from Planet of the Apes, it's kind of weird that even though it's supposed to be distinctive and unique and separate from the 89 Batman film, I can still hear shades of that, you know. And it's a weird, stupid comment, and it's not really a very well thought out criticism. And I don't mean it as a criticism at all. I'm just saying it's just when I think of Elfman's score with the 89 movie, it's so specific and so iconic and so epic that I feel like sometimes in my mind anyway, I'm hearing it in his other scores when sometimes I shouldn't. Does that make
Interesting.
sense?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's
that's
interesting.
probably just me. That's probably just me, you know. But I would never consider anything in the 89 Batman movie, as far as Elfman's music is concerned, to be less than amazing and stellar. So
Yeah, and as Jackie says, and thanks for making a comment, Jackie. He says, I love the music I love the music of these films, and I don't think any of us debate that. I think we all think the music is great. I think the issue that Elfman had was that he didn't feel that the mix was done properly. That's really what it comes down to. He felt that key parts of his music are not heard the way that he would like them to have been heard, just basically due to the sound mix. Because I think everybody agrees that it's a fantastic soundtrack. I definitely actually do want to take a listen to it, and a watch and listen with, like I said, with a more critical ear. But again, the thing that I wonder is like, well, what version am I going to be watching? Because I probably would watch on HBO Max, and like, who the hell knows what version that is? They might have done a whole new remaster for that, for all I know.
and again, like I said, I can understand where he's coming from too, because I have worked on books. I'm not going to say which one, but in my mind, there's one in particular where I know that Scott Clark, who I was working with at the time, that we killed ourselves. We turned in some amazing pages over a weekend. I mean, killed ourselves trying to get this book done. And then I get the comp copy in the mail, and I open it up and I look at it. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, and the colors are not at all what I saw in my mind's eye. And when I'm looking at the page, I'm seeing someone who maybe is phoning it in from across the street, just trying to get a check. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the book was completed and it shipped on time. And as far as editorial is concerned, they're happy because they've got their witch they can sell. But from a creative standpoint, when you think about the amount of time and effort that was invested in the storytelling on this particular story, and then you look at the colors, and the colors are basically, they're not elevating the material, they're actually pulling the material down, they're cheapening it, you know what I mean? And it doesn't fit the tone or the context or what you were trying to say visually in this. And I'm talking about my own personal experience, and it's painful, you know. So I understand what Danny Elfman is saying, because, you know, when someone is just kind of phoning it in to get the job done, it's never good for anyone, because you hope that you can trust your collaborative partner to bring their best to the game. Again, the goal hopefully is for each contribution to a film, to a storytelling endeavor or comic book, it doesn't matter what it is. The hope is that each person who works on it is elevating the material, because that's what you want to do. You want to add to the experience and you want to elevate the material, always, always, always. And so when someone basically phones it in, it basically cheapens everyone else's contribution. So I understand what he's saying. But like I said, again, to my own untrained ear, I would never consider anything that Danny Elfman contributed to the 89 Batman movie less than the work of almost sheer genius in my mind.
Right. Yeah, I hear you there.